one follow up on like people having more sex in college. Like, I have an interesting hypothetical question, which is say like an incel, like your average incel now, socially awkward, has a hard time approaching women in public, probably on OnlyFans, watching lots of porn, all kinds of psychological traits and pathologies that go along with that. Do you think that incel uh, type of young man, if that young man instead grew up in the 80s or 90s, would have been much more likely for him to get laid?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing special about, us Gen X guys being better guys. It's just the social context and particularly the technological context was different. I would also say there were social norms where adults supported teenage and college courtship with various social events and rituals to a degree that I don't think happens anymore. So there was a real push to do more extracurricular activities, join clubs in high school that meet after class, mostly for the social benefits, right? And to meet girls or to meet boys. Um, we had this thing called cotillion when I was a teenager, which was 4 times a year. Young men and women from different high schools around my hometown, Cincinnati, Ohio, would get together. It would be a formal event. So these poor, embarrassed 15, 16-year-old boys would be in full dinner jacket tuxedos, right? The girls would be in basically ball gowns. And, you'd have a DJ, you'd go to the country club, you would get together, and the boys would line up one side of the room, girls on the other side of the room, and you would approach. You would basically practice a cold approach. Guys would walk all the way across the dance floor, ask a girl to dance. About 50% of the time, she'd say yes. Then you dance the next song. But 50% of the time, nope, not interested. You slink
Yep.
back to your side. And it was almost like cognitive behavioral therapy to get over approach anxiety, right? It was an
Yeah.
engineered social situation that forced young people to practice both, you know, doing the may I meet you kind of thing, but also dealing with public sexual rejection in front of all your peers. You just get used to it,
Yeah.
right? You habituate to it. You burn through that discomfort.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those social events and kind of rituals and norms have evaporated. And parents have failed Gen Z to give them the kind of guidance that would be really helpful in this domain.
Okay, you brought up a lot of things that wasn't on the menu of questions, but it's so interesting, and I think about it all the time. So we can get into it a little bit more. First of all, about the incel thing again, like incels have always existed, right? It's like 60s, 70s, 80s. Like they're like, can you describe a little bit like that phenomenon? Like even in when the social environment was more conducive for sexual and
Mhm.
romantic experiences, there still was some underclass of guys, even when you were in college, that had wanted to get laid but had a really hard time getting it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing to contextualize here is, there's 6,000 species of mammals, and for 70 million years, most mammal males in most species have been incels, right? The vast majority of deer and wildebeest and gorillas have been incels, right? You get a polygyny mating system where the top males who have the greatest dominance and formidability, right, and fighting ability tend to monopolize most of the females. And that's absolutely typical for most mammal species. So a lot of the young males in almost every mammal species are just kind of moving around on the periphery of where the females are. They can't attract any mates. They don't hold any territory. They're probably not going to reproduce at all ever. Or if they do attain high dominance rank, it's temporary, maybe for 1 or 2 mating seasons out of a 10-year lifespan, right? They're getting mates. And the rest of the time, they're incels. That's even true for gorillas, right?
Hmm.
So humans are really unusual in that we have these multi-male, multi-female groups that we live in, clans, right? Hunter-gatherers live in clans. And we do mutual mate choice, and we don't actually do that kind of polygyny. We mostly form pair bonds, and we form them pretty early in adulthood if you're a hunter-gatherer. So basically, for a few million years, right, from about 3 million years ago when we first evolved pair bonds until quite recently, most males and most females were finding mates by their early to mid 20s. And there weren't that many incels compared to now. There were still some. There were still some guys who were such kind of dumbasses or losers that nobody wanted them. But most of them could find at least some female partner because most people were mating, kind of in a pair bond, kind of monogamously. And it's only in the recent decade or so that it's almost like we're returning to the mammalian default, right, of kind of polygyny. And the dating apps, oh my God, the dating apps amplify this to a very high degree,
We'll get to that. Yep. But here's an interesting question. How strongly do you think incel status, incel behavior, how strong do you think the correlation is between incel status, incel behavior with attractiveness as a male?
I think it certainly is somewhat correlated, but I think what tends to happen is, and I've seen this so much in the last 10 years, I've been tracking this, and it's tragic. The incels think that women only care about height and money. Now, it is true that on dating apps, it's very easy for women to filter for self-reported height and self-reported income. And those are a couple of the first things that they use to filter out guys.
Although the very popular apps like Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble, they don't have an income. They don't ask you about how much money you make.
I'm not sure about that, actually.
Yeah. Those are like the pretty most popular ones these days.
And I used OkCupid quite a bit back in the day, 10, 12 years ago.
Okay. I don't even know what that is.
Okay. It is still one of the top 10 dating apps.
Oh, really?
It used to be awesome like 10 years ago. You could answer thousands of questions about your traits and your preferences. Oh. It's kind of, it turned super woke, though, before the first Trump election.
Okay.
But what you do get is, I know with regard to height, right, a lot of women are saying, I want a guy 6 feet or taller, which is effing stupid because the average height of American men is 5'9", 5'10", 6 feet plus. You're selecting out 85% of guys.
Yeah.
Right. With that one question, you're limiting your pool to 1/7 of what you could have gotten otherwise. So that's a completely retarded thing for women to do. And likewise, if they are selecting for, income and they're saying, I want a guy in his mid 20s who's making 6 figures. Oh, good luck with that. That's like 2% of guys in their mid 20s.
Yeah.
So
hit me up, ladies. Hit me up in the DM. Let's go. So we got that Substack money. I'm just kidding. Well, not kidding, but also kidding. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. Okay. Got to get my Substack up and running. So long story short, I think what's happening is the dating apps are biasing the way that mating is working, and it's pushing young women to use very superficial selection criteria because the young women are getting overwhelmed with matches and overwhelmed with DMs and too much interest. So they just want to filter out, right, as many guys as possible. But they're filtering on the wrong stuff. They're filtering on superficial traits. And then the incels react to that and they're like, women are superficial and dumb and materialistic and heightist and whatever, blah. And then they get frustrated. If an incel could spend even a week as a woman on Tinder and experience what the average woman experiences, I think that would completely flip their perspective.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot there. And dating apps were on the list of things to talk about. A lot of questions there. But again, with the point about how strongly do you think incel behavior is correlated with attractiveness. Like that's, you hear that a lot with young guys. Like, oh, it might not even just be height, just like my face just doesn't look great,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's why I can't get laid.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of cope. There's a lot of sort of black-pilled pessimism that is premature. And in the mate book, we told young guys, look, if you get in shape, if you just take care of yourself, you do some aerobics, you lift heavy, you do some sprinting, you get in decent shape, easier than ever now with Ozempic, right? If you understand how to dress, how to wear clothes that fit, how to present yourself in a way that is like Mr. Right, good potential future husband material, right? Not sleazy playa, but like, this is a good guy. He is stylish, but not faddish, right? He has good taste, but he's not super trendy. If you just get that stuff sorted out, right, and you can avoid relying on dating apps where women are just filtering for very superficial facial features or height, you can do fine. Like it's not that hard to be in better shape than most people of your age.